Hi, I'm Parneet Jaggi, and this is our fourth video in the series on A Bachelor's Complaint of the Behavior of Married People, an essay by Charles Lamb. When we look at the essay in the beginning lines, we see that he is kind of reviving and also, in a way, complaining against the behavior of those people who have now got married, but before marriage, they were his fast friends. And after marriage, the way their behavior and the attitude of looking at him changes, it is highly offensive and he feels disturbed. So in the next line, he says, then there is the exaggerating way or the way of irony. That is, where they find you an object of especial regard with their husband, who is not so easily to be shaken from the lasting attachment founded on esteem, which he has conceived towards you. Now, in these lines, he's talking about the wives, the attitude of the wives of his friends. When he visits his married friends, the wives behave with him in a way which is an exaggerating way. Ironically, they try to disregard or insult him, which he founds very disturbing, and his regard, his respect is shaken. And he says that by never qualified exaggerations to cry up all that you say or do till the good man. Now, this good man is the friend who was unmarried, but now he has his wife by his side. Till the good man who understands well enough that it is all done in compliment to him, grows weary of the debt of gratitude which is due to so much candor, and by relaxing a little on his part and taking down a peg or two in his enthusiasm, sinks at length to that kindly level of moderate esteem, that decent affection and complacent kindness towards you, where she herself can join in sympathy with him without much stress and violence to her sincerity. Now, here he is trying to kind of get another allegation against the wives of his friends. He says they kind of exaggerate their statements against me, or they throw ironical glances and ironical statements towards me, due to which the good man, who was actually earlier my friend, who understands well enough that she is doing all this complimenting for his sake. So he, in a way, kinds of relaxes down, doesn't take all this irony in a very serious tone, and sinks at length to that kind of a moderate esteem, complacent kindness towards you. He kind of grows indifferent. He relaxes in his own stature, and where she herself can join in sympathy with him. So ultimately, after her behaving like that, the friend also kind of becomes sympathetic, but he doesn't control her, or he doesn't stop her from behaving with Lamb like this. Another way, for the ways they have to accomplish so desirable a purpose are infinite, is with a kind of innocent simplicity, continually to mistake what it was which first made their husband fond of you. Now, here there is another allegation which Lamb, as a bachelor, has to make against the wife. He says there is a kind of an innocence and simplicity in which the wife says or kind of hints or implies that there was some mistake that the husband might have made when he fell in love with you. That means she tries to hint that Lamb has no such quality because of which her husband had liked him as a friend. But maybe there is some kind of simplistic tone in her voice which kind of sarcastically implies that Lamb is without those qualities which could make him a good friend. If an esteem for something excellent in your moral character was that which riveted the chain which she is to break upon any imaginary discovery of a want of poignancy in her conversation, she'll cry, I thought, my dear, you described your friend Mr. So-and-so as a great wit. If, on the other hand, it was for some supposed charm in your conversation that he first grew to like you, and was content for this to overlook some trifling irregularities in your moral department. Upon the first notice of any of these, she as readily exclaims, "This, my dear, is your good Mr. So and so." So now, through these dialogues are supposed to have been said by the wife. This wife is trying to assert to the husband, "I thought that your friend might be this, this, this." That means, I thought you had described that your friend has a great wit, or he has these qualities, or he is so good, or he is so great. But she tries to show now that she can't see all those qualities. That where are those qualities which the friend had described? One good lady, whom I took the liberty of expostulating with for not showing me quite so much respect as I thought due to her husband's old friend, had the candour to confess to me that she had often heard Mr. So and so speak of me before marriage, and that she had conceived a great desire to be acquainted with me, but that the sight of me had very much disappointed her expectations. For, from her husband's representations of me, she had formed a notion that she was to see a fine, tall, officer-like looking man, the very reverse of which proved to be the truth. Now, this is very pathetic. This is very sad, the way Lamb has to face these sarcastic remarks of the wives of his friends. He says, this one good lady who did not show any respect to me was blunt enough, was outspoken enough to tell me that Mr. So and so had told me something about you, and I had picturized you as a fine, tall gentleman with officer-like qualities, but you are completely the reverse. You are completely the opposite. So this is the kind of remark Lamb has to bear publicly by the ladies. This was candid, and I had the civility not to ask her in return how she came to pitch upon a standard of personal accomplishments for her husband's friend which differed so much from his own. For my friend's dimensions as near as possible approximate to mine. He is standing 5 feet 5 in his shoes, in which I have the advantage of him by about half an inch, and he no more than myself exhibiting any indications of a martial character in his air or countenance. So he says, I did not speak. This was candid, but I had the civility not to ask her in return. He said, I did not speak in return because I felt I was civilized. But I had all those questions in mind, that how did she form that impression of me as a fine, tall, officer-like gentleman when her husband shared the common qualities of height and look and attributes like me. He says, I at least have the advantage of about half an inch more height. I'm taller half an inch than the husband, and he doesn't bear that or show that martial character in his air, means in his attitude or even in his face, than me. How could she form such an impression of the look that she is now describing? Then he says, there are some of the mortifications which I have encountered in the absurd attempt to visit at the house. Mortifications means more embarrassments, more insults. He says there are some more insults which I had to face in my foolish attempt to visit their houses. To enumerate them all would be a vain endeavor. He says, I cannot enlist them all. It is useless. There are too many. I shall therefore just glance at the very common impropriety of which married ladies are guilty. So he says, I'm just talking about the common insults, the incivilities that I have been facing at the hands of the married ladies, of treating us as if we were their husbands and vice versa. So he is going to give here some examples where they are being treated informally, very coolly, very casually, as if they were the husband, while on the other hand they should have been treated as guests formally. But he says no. I mean when they use us with familiarity and their husbands with ceremony. Testacia, for instance. Now, this is a fictional name. This is an imaginary name which he's using as an example. He says, "This lady called Testacia kept me the other night 2 or 3 hours beyond my usual time of supping." Supping means dinner. While she was fretting, because Mr. So and so did not come home. So now this lady, Testacia, is getting irritated. She is fretting because her husband, Mr. So and so, has not reached home in time. But the writer has been kept waiting for 2 to 3 hours for dinner, till the oysters were all spoiled, rather than she would be guilty of the impoliteness of touching one in his absence. Now, Lamb had visited her as a guest, but the husband did not return home. So he got late for dinner, and the oysters, that dish of the sea oysters that was prepared for him, was not served to Lamb till the husband came home. That dish got spoiled, and Lamb could not have dinner till late at night. This was reversing the point of good manners, for ceremony is an invention to take off the uneasy feeling which we derive from knowing ourselves to be less the object of love and esteem with a fellow creature than some other person is. So he says this was mere insult on my side, but I think that this was reversing good manners. Means this was against the good manners that you invite a friend, you do not serve him anything, you keep waiting for your husband, and then you keep getting irritated also. It endeavors to make up by superior attentions in little points for that invidious preference which is forced to deny the greater. Had Testacia kept the oysters back for me, and withstood her husband's importunities to go to supper, she would have acted according to the strict rules of propriety. So he says that she could be more civilized, she could be more disciplined, she could be more social and follow the rules of propriety if she had kept some nice oysters back for me, and she would have behaved in a certain way as to pardon the husband's importunities to go to supper, and she should have served me dinner well in time. I know no ceremony that ladies are bound to observe to their husbands beyond the point of a modest behavior and decorum. Therefore, I must protest against the vicarious gluttony of Ceracia, who at her own table sent away a dish of morellas, which I was applying to with great goodwill to her husband at the other end of table. So now this is another instance where he notices that this wife by the name of Ceracia, it's an imaginary name, he saw the gluttony, the ill-mannered gluttony, too much eating, too much greed in eating, who at her own table sent away of a dish of morellas to the husband at the end of the table, rather than serving these dishes to the guest who was Lamb, and recommended a plate of less extraordinary gooseberries to my unwedded palate in their stead. And what was Lamb offered? He was offered the less extraordinary, the less nutritious or tasty gooseberries, vegetarian dish, because his mouth, his palate was unwedded. Means, now this is again humorous, because he is not married, so he does not have a claim to the non-vegetarian dish of morellas, but he had to be patient and happy with gooseberries. Neither can I excuse the wanton affront of, but I'm wary of stringing up all my married acquaintance by Roman denominations. He says, but now I need to stop here, because I am so tired, I'm weary of putting up together all my married acquaintance, all my visits to my married friends by counting numbers, Roman denominations. Let them amend, let them repair themselves, let them correct themselves, change their manners, or I promise to record the full-length English of their names, to the terror of all such desperate offenders in future. So this is kind of the conclusion of the essay, is a kind of a threat also. It can be a kind of a warning to the friends who have now got married, whose wives and families behave with him in a weird way, in an unpleasant and an abnormal way which offends him. So, therefore, towards the end of the essay, he says, let these friends correct their manners, let them change their manners, or otherwise, I promise to record their names and show these names in public, and then they will be terrified. So I warn these desperate offenders to be more precautious, more civilized with me in future. So this is how Charles Lamb puts all these mortifications and his own personal complaints against the married people in this essay. So we'll discuss the style of the essay in the coming video. Thank you for now.